All righty then. Welcome on in to the latest episode of the Off Air Podcast. Chris Thomas joined by the Nantz, Mike Conti. And Mike, yesterday being Tuesday, was a very, very good day in the A. Even though not all of our teams were playing in the A, results were still the same. It was a great 404 day, not just for 92.9 The Game, but the Braves continue their hot start to the season. And the Atlanta Hawks, I want to approach this conversation very delicately, without their superstar, Trae Young.
Careful.
Win decisively, shall I say, against the Chicago Bulls, a team that was fighting with them, against them for the 8, 9, 10 matchup as that continues to be shuffled out in the Eastern Conference. And Mike, I'll leave it at this before we move on to 404 day coverage. In the postgame for the Hawks last night, I saw a lot of smiling. I saw a lot of hugging.
Don't do it.
I saw a lot of I'll use jubilation on the faces of the
Chris,
Hawks.
Don't do this. Don't do it.
I'm just saying.
Don't do it. They have lost 5 in a row without him coming into last night. Yeah, they're going to be jubilant because that was a huge road win in a game that carried a lot of seeding implications. If the Hawks lost that game, there's a really, really good chance they're going into next week in the 10 seed.
Yeah.
The fact that they won that game, it about as low as they can fall now is the 9, and even the 9 would be okay because at least you're at home for that, that first elimination game next Wednesday. So that's why they're jubilant. Like, let's not do this. Let's not. We all are thinking the same thing, right?
Yep.
All right, we're all thinking the same thing. Just they're 3-5 without him this year. That's not a very good record. They have lost 5 in a row without him this year. That's not very good. I think if we learned anything last night, it's that the Bulls really stink.
Yeah.
The Bulls missed a lot of open looks. They missed a couple bunnies that were really, really important. Once Alex Caruso got in early foul trouble, that was kind of a wrap for them. And Caruso, that second foul, that was so vital. Billy Donovan blew his challenge with 5 minutes to go in the first quarter.
Sure did.
So I don't want to take anything away from the Hawks and what they did last night, but let's just proceed with caution on the storyline. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about this on Duke and Bell.
Yep.
Sure, Carl and Mike have their thoughts.
Yep.
But Trae had, super bug or whatever, and he couldn't be there, and his teammates got the job done. So
they sure did.
Team, right?
Yeah, go Hawks. All right, 404 day. Like I said, a rousing success. So, Mike, on the radio station, we had special imaging made. We were playing music from artists in the city. Jermaine Dupri even stopped by, which was awesome. You can check out those pictures at 99 The Game on Twitter and Instagram and the whole shebang. Why was it important for you as brand manager to make sure that we represented for the city on that day?
Well, 404 Day, the origins of that are kind of interesting, and it started during the pandemic and very, very early in the pandemic. You go back to, late March, early April of 2020 when all the lockdowns were pretty much starting. Very, very scary, uncertain time in our country and in our world and in our city. And I thought the sports teams, and I don't know where it started. I'm not sure if it started with the Falcons and Atlanta United. I think it may have, but I'm not positive on that. But one of the teams in town decided to take April 4th and basically do kind of a social media blitz about, hey, Atlanta, we're still here. We're going to get through this. We're going to be okay. I want to say some of the athletes may have even done part of the narration. It was a really nice kind of uplifting social media post more than anything. It was just a tweet, a video they tweeted, but it was very, very uplifting at the time. And I think it got a lot of very positive reaction. So by the time we got to 404 Day in 2021, Then we're looking around here at the radio station. We're trying to think of, okay, how do we really lean into 404 Day? This is something that our teams have started. Some of the teams that we partner with have started. How do we help them grow and enhance it? So, look, Atlanta, Georgia changed my life. I love this city. I hope to never have to leave it. I love this place. If this is a way for us to kind of advance a love letter for the city of Atlanta, I'm all for doing it as a radio station, but I think it's just fun. I think it's a fun way to be a little bit different on a day. And yeah, playing Atlanta music and having special imaging, there's nothing really significant about April 4th on the calendar. It does come during a really fun time in sports where the Braves are getting going and they have their home opener this week, and the Hawks are making their final push, and we have the Masters going on, and a lot of fun things, but there's really nothing truly noteworthy or significant about it being April the 4th. It just gives us a chance to do something different. And I think when we do something different, we have a good chance of making an impression on our listeners and not just doing, the same old content every day. So, chance for us to have a little fun, nothing profound, no money being raised for charity, nothing being given away, nothing being awarded or anything else. Just a chance for us to have fun and kind of reflect on, you know what? We're pretty lucky that we get to live here. We're pretty lucky that we get to live here. And there's a reason why so many artists and musicians and athletes and movie stars and TV stars decide to live in Atlanta, Georgia. Cost of living's great. Weather is awesome. The city has great amenities, great food, great restaurants, great places to hang out. Let's celebrate it and have a little fun doing it on the radio.
Just as an anecdote, so not one of my favorite musical artists. He's a DJ and producer by the name of Pretty Lights. His real name is Derek Vincent Smith. He announced yesterday that he was coming out of a nearly 10-year retirement. He retired from music and touring in about 2014. And yesterday he made a big social media post with his team, and he announced that he was coming back. And he's kicking off his tour with a 9-city run. And where's one of the stops?
Atlanta, gotta be
right here in Atlanta, coming for a 3-night run at the Eastern. And Mike, you may have noticed last night, I already put in for vacation because I'm going to see my favorite. I have not seen him perform live since 2013, and I am taking time to go see him in all of his glory, all 3 nights, and I cannot wait. But that just goes to show you Atlanta is one of the places you got to go.
And we talk about cool places in Atlanta. Have you been to the Eastern before?
That's where he's performing.
And have you been there before?
Oh, many times.
Okay,
it's awesome. The best concert venue in the city.
Awesome venue. The Hawks did their draft party there last June. That was my first time there. We had Jermaine Dupri in here yesterday as part of 404 Day, and I think Jermaine Dupri was kind of expressing a lot of the things we're expressing here about just how passionate he is about this city, how much he loves it, and how much he loves the teams. He's going to do a show at the Eastern coming up pretty soon, he said. That is a really fun venue.
It's awesome.
It's take Uber. I don't recommend parking there, but it is a little tough to park and take.
Not a problem for me.
Yeah, no, you could. I don't know if you could walk there from where you live, but that'd be a decent walk. But take Uber. But no, the Eastern's awesome. And if you get up in that first balcony where you're right on top of the stage and you can get right on the rail there, really, really great place to catch a concert, a show, or just hang out and have fun. That's a free ad for the Eastern, but I really do love that. Center Stage down the street's another one. Really, really great, intimate concert venue. We've got a bunch of them here in Atlanta. I think the Tabernacle's great. The Fox is a little bit bigger. The Fox is an awesome place to catch a show. Really, really cool kind of throwback place to catch a show. I saw John Legend there. I think one of the best outdoor concert venues in this country. is in Atlanta, and that's Chastain Park Amphitheater.
Mm.
And if you get it when the weather is nice and you get it when the bathroom lines are short, it doesn't get any better than that. It's like catching a top level concert in the woods. And you can bring your own food in. A lot of people bring their own like kind of picnic setup in. It's just a really chill, fun place to catch a show. And as long as the weather's comfortable, you can't do any better than that. So again, an embarrassment of riches that we're spoiled with here in Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. And I cannot wait. The countdown is on August 24th. All right, Mike, from some uplifting stories to an unfortunate one, but it prompted me to think of a question where we can honor some of the greats in entertainment. Late last week, one of my favorite actors, Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, announced that he is semi-retiring, quote, from acting. He's taking a much more bridge schedule with the movies that he's going to put out because it was discovered that he has a rare gene that links him to be much more diagnosable for Alzheimer's disease, which is obviously a tragic disease. If you or anyone you know has a loved one who's been affected by that disease, it is, there's no words to describe. So he's going to take the time and focus on his health and make sure that he does everything he can to keep his body and mind right to, hold off that diagnosis for hopefully it never happens, but definitely at least for as long as possible. So that prompted me to think, who are some of the artists, athletes, musicians that hung it up before you either got a chance to see them in person or you thought that they had more left in the tank to perform? And I thought we'd just reminisce for a couple minutes here about that. The one that jumps to mind for me, because he was so popular growing up with my generation, is Kurt Cobain. I obviously never got to see him perform with Nirvana. They peaked when I was a little bit too young. I was pretty much a preteen at that point, but I would have loved to have seen Nirvana in concert and seen how their music would have evolved over the years.
That's a great one. This is going to sound a little controversial, but hear me out on it. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson had some personal things that were bizarre at best and potentially much, much worse than bizarre at worst. But the guy was a heck of an entertainer. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine if Michael Jackson, Chris, he was going to do, I think the tour was called This Is It or something like that, right around the time he died. It wasn't a tour. He was going to do a residency in London. Imagine then if he would have graduated from there to maybe doing a residency in Las Vegas. Can you imagine how cool it would have been to catch Michael Jackson in Vegas?
Yeah.
And maybe he would still, he was a very talented guy, incredibly hard worker, which, reportedly is one of the reasons why he got himself into trouble with medication, because he was working so hard. I think it stands to reason that he would have cranked out a lot more music. And there was kind of a timeless nature of his music that, even the stuff he was turning out late in his career, I thought were bangers. They were real hits. So, look, Michael Jackson's a odd bird, and he had a lot of very kind of odd habits about him, but as a musician, I really admired him and loved his work. And I wish that he was still with us, because I think we would still be enjoying his work, not all the off the stage stuff, but his work, well into this decade and beyond.
Separating art from artist is the phrase that gets thrown out all the time. And by the way, there's about a 99.9% chance I'm going to clip you saying that was a banger, and that's going to be played on Dukes and Bell for a long time to come.
Well, hold on. Let me do it in the clear then. That was a banger.
You heard it here. You heard it here first.
Look, I mean, everyone hated Remember the Time. I thought that was a banger. I love that.
It's a great song.
Black or White. Love that. If you look at the halftime show from the 93 Super Bowl, the Cowboys-Bills Super Bowl at the Rose Bowl, where Michael Jackson did halftime, one of the really great halftime shows of all time, maybe the greatest. next to someone else who I think would definitely fall on this list, and that's Prince.
Prince. Yep.
And Prince, again, kind of ironically, his final live performance was right up the street from here at the Fox Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, you talk about someone who was still at the very top of his game and was so elite that he didn't have to pressure himself to do things he didn't want to do. He didn't have to turn out albums just to make money. He didn't have to tour just to make money. He was that good. He could work at his own pace and have his own creative process and do as much or as little as he wanted. So Prince absolutely is someone who falls in the gone too soon. And again, this isn't like a Chris Hemsworth deal where guys are retiring. We're talking about people passing away. It's, I think, a little harder to find examples of artists, entertainers, musicians who retire, because that doesn't really happen a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe it happens a little more on TV. Like, I'll give you another one, David Letterman. I mean, he did decide to retire, and I think he was still at the top of his game.
Yeah.
And Johnny Carson even, and I was a little kid when he retired. I think it was only 11 or 12, but Carson, I remember his last year on the Tonight Show, he was still making me laugh. He was making me laugh big time. He absolutely would be on that list. Two comedians who died tragically and very, very young, but two comedians who I wish were still with us because I just thought they were hilarious. Chris Farley and Phil Hartman.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, can you imagine if Chris Farley was still alive today and, maybe still doing sketch comedy or doing more movies or something like that? How lucky would we be if we could get one or two more laughs out of Chris Farley? And the same with Phil Hartman, who I thought was just, in a dry way, like maybe one of the best dry comedians of all time, certainly of our generation. It hurts that we aren't able to enjoy them anymore. Again, not because they retired, because they passed away, but it's a long list. It's a good topic. It's a really long list, and what really gets you is when you see people who are at the top of their game either retire or involuntarily, lose the ability to entertain us.
We don't have the time, but in the sports world, the obvious number one is Michael Jordan, depending
Sure.
on what you believe about
Yeah.
what happened there. And then guys like Barry Sanders come to mind, Calvin Johnson. I mean, there's a list of guys who hung it up early in the sports world too.
Yeah, Barry Sanders, that's the one for me. Barry Sanders, and that kind of started the trend, unfortunately, of running backs who really couldn't go more than 10 years. That was the shocker when Barry Sanders retired. I mean, I think Jordan, you kind of got the sense when he had his first retirement that, maybe there were things going on where his heart wasn't really quite in it anymore. So it wasn't a shock when he retired the second time. Barry Sanders was one that really floored me. Someone at the very, very top of his game, someone who was setting records left and right. And I want to say Barry Sanders was a first-team All-Pro the year he retired in 1998. I mean, he was still absolutely at the top of his game. Bobby Orr, I'm too young to remember this, but Bobby Orr was someone who had to retire at a very young age due to injuries, and one of the great hockey players of all time.
Andrew Luck just happened with him.
Andrew Luck, yeah, to a lesser extent. I mean, I don't know if I'd put Andrew Luck on the level of like the absolute greats, but again, someone who stepped away at the very top of his game to kind of pursue other things. I mean, even in auto racing, I mean, Jimmy Johnson retiring when he did. Someone who dominated the sport of NASCAR. Not everyone who listens to us is a big fan of NASCAR, but just another example. It's a really good topic.
Bo Morgan is in his office right now. His ears just perked up.
There you go. Yeah, no, right. It's past 1 o'clock. Those probably gone. But no, it's a good topic. I want to go back to the Chris Hemsworth thing for a moment because Alzheimer's has touched my family in a very terrible way. And it is a horrible thing. And I absolutely wish him the best. I know there is a test you can take. In fact, it's funny. Jim Nantz once brought that up to my brother. My brother works in communications for the Indianapolis Colts, and Jim Nantz does a lot of work with an Alzheimer's Foundation. And Nantz told him, you can take this test and find out. And my brother had the same answer as I don't want to know.
Right.
I don't think I would want to know that. That was very brave of Chris Hemsworth to take the test. If I have the gene, which I think there's probably a pretty decent chance I do. I don't want to live in fear of it. I think I would rather just live in ignorance of it, which I guess is even worse. But God willing, hopefully, we make medical advances where our generation and future generations don't have to suffer the same way that prior generations have just been, profoundly suffering with Alzheimer's. So for Chris Hemsworth, I wish him the absolute best.
Yeah, and unknowingly or maybe knowingly, perfect segue by you, because our final topic of the day, Mr. Jim Nantz. None other than Mr. March Madness himself. Now, he signed off for the final time. We're going to play that in just a second. And I'm excited to share with you my opinion on the changing of the guard, because I think they have the perfect guy to slide in his place.
One thing I learned through all of this is everybody has a dream, and everybody has a story to tell. Just try to find that story. Be kind.
You told it better than most, let me tell you.
Can I tell you one other thing? I mean this, not to try to play off hello friends, but to you, everybody in the college game, on CBS Family, my family, all the viewers, thank you for being my friend.
Well done, Jim. Well done. You got us all at the end there. Not a dry eye in the house, because for a lot of us, and me and you are not, we're not 20 years apart, but we're a generation apart, and he is still the voice of college basketball for both of us. So, he touched many, many people along the way, and, he's still going to do golf and football, but he's incredible at what he did.
So a couple things about Jim Nantz. Incredibly nice individual. I hope everyone knows that. Like the on-air persona that he has, notwithstanding, because actually kind of thought that sign-off was a little extra, in my opinion.
Really? Well, hold on a minute. Time out.
I love the man. I thought maybe just a teeny bit extra.
Wow. I'm shocked to hear this, honestly.
Yeah, like it just a little jazzy, little, find a story to tell. Thank you for being my friend. Like, just, this is Jim Nantz saying so long. That would work fine for me. Or actually, who had a really great sign off when he left ESPN was Brent Musburger. Brent Musburger left ESPN to go work for, I think, a toad service in Vegas or something like that.
I think he started it, actually. VSIN network. He started that.
Yeah, and he said the way he signed off was, I've had a great time doing this. I hope you'll come out to Vegas and see me, and maybe we'll have a beer and share a win together. I'm like, yeah, okay. I like that. I can relate to that. Anyhow, all that being said.
Mike Conti, not a fan of the sappy sign-off. That's what we learned today.
And see, I was even afraid to say that, because I knew that, that would maybe take attention away from what is really important, which is that Jim Nantz is a really, really nice guy.
Yes.
And I've had the pleasure of seeing some acts of kindness by Jim Nantz that I'm not going to elaborate on, because I don't think he would want me to elaborate on it. But when I worked in Savannah, I cover the golf tournament on Hilton Head every year. Jim Nantz would call that tournament for CBS. And let's just say there were many kindnesses extended by Jim Nantz to people on the Hilton Head community who he had developed friendships with. And seeing that up close and personal really, really impressed me. So deep admiration for him as a person. You say you think of him as your childhood voice of college basketball, which is true. I know this sounds crazy, because a lot of people are very loyal to Keith Jackson or Brent Musburger or Vern Lundquist. There was a time, Chris, in the late 80s and early 1990s where CBS had the best college football package. ABC had the Big Ten and Pac-10, and that's it.
Okay.
CBS had everything else.
Wow.
Okay, so think about it. In the late 80s, Notre Dame, Miami, Alabama to an extent, Penn State, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado. Those were the teams running college football in the late 80s and early 90s. If you wanted to see those teams play, it was on CBS. And Jim Nantz was the lead college football announcer for CBS in 1989 and 1990.
Huh.
So those were kind of my formative years watching college football, and that's where I will always associate Jim Nantz. He came back, he had a second run as the number one college football voice on CBS in 1996. When CBS got the SEC back and the Big East back, CBS was out of college football from 1991 to basically the bowl games in 95, and then out of nowhere they got the Fiesta Bowl and the Orange Bowl, and there were a couple championship games in there. But before Sean McDonough took over in 1997, Nantz had a second run as the lead college football announcer on CBS, where he did the SEC Game of the Week for 1 or 2 years with Terry Donahue. So I strongly associate Nantz with being, one of the premier voices of college football. Now, all that being said, the guy who's coming in to replace him, I think, has given more to our industry than anyone else I can think of. And, I had the pleasure of meeting him in Brooklyn under a very kind of unfortunate circumstance when Bob Rathburn fell ill, and I had to fill in for him on some Hawks games. And one of those games was in Brooklyn. And, the man that you're going to talk about, Chris, Ian Eagle, I was very lucky to tell him in person how much I appreciate he's given back to our industry through his sportscasting camps, his mentorship of lots of young broadcasters, mentorship that he's offered to me personally, which means a lot to me. I like it when good things happen to good people, and I like that a good thing is happening to Ian Eagle.
Yeah, he is simply, as the song says, simply the best. He, being where I'm from, New York City, and knowing his journey, he's one of the originals that came up through our sister station, WFAN. Started as an intern,
right?
Did everything from cutting tape to producing overnight shifts to, doing updates, hosting, and then eventually rose through the ranks to get to where he is now. And he is, I would say, humble almost to a fault. He is so nice, so kind. Anytime you reach out to, I have a 100% response rate from Ian Eagle anytime I've ever asked him to come on a show, whether he can or he can't do it. And to
he
say
gets
that,
it.
yeah,
because you sit in your seat. He's been the producer and the booker. He understands, and he understands the importance of paying it forward.
And then when you talk about his actual on-air work, I think there's no one better in the game today for any sport that combines analysis and humor.
Yeah.
He is so good at that. You half the time you think you're listening to the number one team for whatever sport you're listening to, and then the other, half you think it's a night at the Improv. And I mean that at the best way possible, because he is genuinely hysterical. But and this is a little personal, but he's my kind of funny. He is slick, sly,
dry.
He'll stitch a line in there that you have to be paying attention in order to get it. And if you're listening close and you pick up on it in that instant, it's hysterical. So I couldn't be happier for him to see him take over. And I know it's going to be different than Jim Nantz, but his flavor, I think, is going to add to the college basketball game in a way that we maybe have never seen before.
Agreed totally. I think he's one of the best currently doing it right up there. I'm a huge Sean McDonough fan. I'm a big Kevin Harlan fan. I think Ian Eagle is one of the premier announcers of our generation. I'm glad now that he's finally getting that big event call. I think when Nantz fully retires, you'll see Ian Eagle get a chance to do a Super Bowl for CBS, which I think is richly deserved. I mean, when CBS got the NFL back in 1998. I want to say Iron Eagle was like on their number 5 or number 6 crew with Mark May.
Oh, man.
So talk about someone who's paid his dues and climbed the ladder, and he's got to be enormously proud of his son, Noah,
Yep.
who at age 25 is going to be the lead college football voice on NBC with Todd Blackledge this fall.
And does the radio for the LA Clippers as well.
Yep. And, his stock is rising in the NFL as well. So, like I said, I like seeing good things happen to good people, like Dave Pasch, who's ESPN announcer, does radio for the Arizona Cardinals. Really, really good person. Glad to see when good things happen to him. Our Tiffany Blackman, another one. I love seeing good things happening to good people and how she is really climbing the ladder at ESPN. So really cool for Ian. And look, Nantz, God, you talk about kind of a weird retirement. He's still working 40 weeks a year.
Yeah.
Still going to do all the golf and the football. So I don't think people realize Nantz really only does college football about 4 weeks a year. He he doesn't do any of the regular season games.
Right.
He comes in for the Big Ten tournament and he does 3 weeks of March Madness, and that's it. So,
good gig if you can get it.
It's a great gig if you can get it. Now, back in the early 90s when CBS didn't have the NFL, like during that period where they lost the NFL and they didn't have the NBA anymore. They lost that in 1990. Nantz was doing more regular season college basketball then, but really since the mid 2000s, he hasn't been doing that for a long time.
And on that note, that'll do it for this edition of the Off Air Podcast.
Thank you for being a friend, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Mike Grumpy Gills Conti, you can follow him on Twitter at Mike Conti 929. I am at C Thomas Radio, and along with Boom Yakamakis, we now have That Was a Banger. We'll catch you guys next.